folks. It is 1 minute after 10 o'clock. We're going to get started in just a moment. In the meantime, we're having a little discussion in the chat about creative and interesting virtual events that we've been able to attend during the stay-at-home orders. I was telling everyone about a cider tasting that a local cidery did. We all got the same tasting pack, and the cider maker took us through them and spoke about how cider is made. People are saying they've seen virtual concerts, dance parties. And those, I've actually attended one of those myself and it was super fun. So we can go ahead and get started now. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, great, thanks. Just making sure the audio is set up correctly. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today for a discussion on how to maintain and grow community through virtual events. We're really excited to have you here today. You may have noticed a few changes to the way we're doing things. So, you know, the CWA is trying to grow and evolve, and hopefully you'll see some nice touches in this webinar today. So I'm going to take you through a quick Zoom tutorial and discuss the ground rules as always. And then I'll hand it over to Chloe Mandell, who is our host today for a panel discussion, and then followed by a Q&A. So get your questions ready. In order to get the most out of today's call, we have a few tips for you. And since this is a call about virtual events, I just want to point out that it's important to educate your attendees on how to be a virtual event attendee. So most of you probably have been here before and you've seen this slide and maybe you're getting tired of it, but you know, it's important to point out the tools you want people to use, how you want folks to engage with you. So here, you know, we're asking if you want to raise your hand and ask a verbal question, make a comment. You can use the raise hand feature to do that. If you have questions for the panel that you want answered, it's important to type those into the Q&A box. Just helps me and Chloe organize the questions. And any other you know, background chatter or comments that you want to make, you can feel free to throw into the chat. And finally, we're trying something a little bit new today. We're encouraging you to share your top takeaways on social with the hashtag #LearnedAtCWA. So we're really interested to see kind of what interests you and what you get out of this call. So go ahead and do that, and we'll kind of get a conversation going on social that way. So the ground rules, as always, just to be polite and respectful of each other and the panel. No personal political commentary, which hopefully won't be too much of a problem. If you do raise your hand to ask a question or make a comment, please try to limit those to 2 minutes. And you know, if anybody breaks any of the rules, we will have to remove them. So today we are very lucky to have with us Chloe Mandell. Chloe Mandell is the founder and CEO of Mandell Experiences, LLC, a full services event company based in Portland, Oregon. She got her start in the industry as a front desk employee at the Circuit Bouldering Gym in 2009. She served as the marketing and events manager for 7 years, and then started her own company, Mandell Experiences, in 2015. Since then, she has helped produce comps such as Seco Block Master Series, Portland Boulder Rally, and The Hang during Outdoor Retailer, and has consulted for a dozen others. Chloe leans on her event experience outside of the climbing industry to support climbing events with event industry best practices and standards. Most notably, Chloe was a lead coordinator at X Games and a hospitality manager at the Rio Olympics. She is also the founder of compcalendar.com, a place to find when and where climbing comps are happening. So thank you so much, Chloe, for being here and for putting this session together. I'm really excited for this one today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's awesome to be here. Thank you, CWA, for having me in this panel. And I can't see you all, so I trust that you're out there. And that's one thing we have to do is address our audience, even if we can't see them face to face. Different platforms can offer different features, and this webinar platform is very much kind of presentation based. But I do want to acknowledge you, the audience. You know, just the various kind of emotional states you're in, the various environmental states you're in. We're not all in the same room. So I can't say what room you're in, but I can speak to kind of, here's some best ways to enjoy this experience. I will be presenting for the next 15 minutes. There's actually studies show that you shouldn't have any presentation longer than 15 minutes due to kind of attention span. So I'll do my best to keep it to that. And so some ways you can kind of get the most out of this experience together is you know, relax, be comfortable, grab some tea, grab some coffee, and you've already done the hard part of showing up. So thank you again. If you can put your phone away, I'm going to do my best to provide you as much value as possible. And in turn, I appreciate your attention. Again, I know with virtual, we're only one click away from a distraction. So the whole goal is to make it as entertaining as possible. And that's why we had a little bit of music to begin with. And so adding some creative elements like that, we're trying to model some ideas that maybe you can incorporate. And so, yeah, I really appreciate your willingness to connect. Please comment. If I say something you have questions about, please throw it in the Q&A, just like Laura said. And don't ever feel like you're disrupting when you hit the chat. It's really important to make your audience feel as comfortable as possible engaging, and make sure that they know that like kind of the etiquette is different now, right? You can just be chatting while someone else is presenting. It's no big deal if you have to leave. We'll be available on demand, so to speak. I picked up some tips from Tareen Azil. She's known as the Zoom coach. So I really like that joke from her. So yeah, this will be recorded. And do stick around though. I want to keep your attention for a special surprise. So without further ado, so I'm going to share my presentation. And here we go. Okay, so we went through this kind of welcome everyone, how best to enjoy the experience. Always a great way to start with your own virtual events. And then kind of what are some goals for today? Go ahead and throw in the chat. What are you hoping to get out of this experience? The reason why that's important is because then I can, after I'm done with my presentation, I can look back on that, make sure that we have addressed your needs. Why did you spend the time to be here today? Some goals that I have for you all today. So definitely want to model what an event can be like, right? Maybe there can be music in the beginning. Maybe you can ask a question in the beginning. All these little tips and tricks are kind of integrated. I'll try and point them out. It's definitely very meta to be running an event at the same time as modeling it, but do take note for sure. A lot of this is deliberate. That being said, right, we're all kind of new here, so thank you in advance for kind of your understanding on that part. And then I want to go through strategies, right? How do you even approach the concept of virtual events and where to even begin? Really excited to have Kenji Haratunian on board to speak to the DEI component that's so relevant right now, and how to make your events as inclusive and equitable as possible. Then I do really want us to brainstorm, right? Just in the same way you popped, if you were here early, and welcome to those just joining. But we did ask a question at the very beginning, what's the most creative virtual events you've seen, be in climbing or not? And so we got some really interesting ideas. And so I'll present some other ideas and we can brainstorm some more together. So this is a collective kind of crowdfunding of information and ideas. And then I really want you all to walk away with tools, confidence, and inspiration to feel comfortable in the virtual event space. So what are we talking about when we say virtual events? It's really important to understand that an event, you often hear the word experience, that's the word I like, it happens inside of us. So there's this great quote from Maya Angelou up here. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And so that's what that virtual event is about. I know a lot of virtual events have been happening right now as educational, as classes, as programming, and really kind of getting down to that emotional element and that journey. That might be the small distinction I might make between a virtual event, how I consider it, than like a class, right? You're taking someone on a journey. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end. We had a beginning with the intro. Our middle is kind of the juice and the fun content. And then the end, I might have a special surprise for you, but we'll wrap it up and make sure that there's some clear takeaways, right? That's the journey we're taking you through, and thinking events in that way is just a great, that's just how our brains work and how we process information too. So it's really getting down to the human element. I know it's virtual, we're on a screen right now, but how can you make it as human as possible and create those moments, because that's what life is, right? A series of moments. So that's a pretty common quote out there. Moving right along. So why are virtual events important to your business, and kind of why are we even talking about them right now? So I fully want to recognize that, gyms have been under so many challenges and a lot outside of your control. And definitely there was a survival mode mentality of like, okay, just, take care of the top priorities. And I would, events kind of maybe fall off that top list. But they definitely serve your community, which I think is pretty high on the list. And here's why I think that. I did a little bit of research and just pulled some mission statements from different gyms' websites. And so I'm not going to read these out loud to save on time, but if you recognize them, shout out to your gym. I wanted to pull the names away because I hope that this resonates with every gym, right? Every gym is trying to create connection, trying to encourage inclusive, community-oriented culture, and trying to create that personal and community growth. So you'll notice community is oftentimes kind of at the very core of what you're about, and virtual events are a very effective way to both maintain, foster, and grow that community. And so another reason why virtual events, why are we talking about this? Why are we here now today? So I want to kind of quote Miguel Neves, who spoke on a webinar that I attended, is that there's essentially 3 groups of people that you're addressing, right? Those who know you, that's your customer base. Those who know they don't know you. Maybe they've heard of you, maybe they're in your area, but they don't really know who you are or what you're all about. And then there's that group 3, those who don't know they don't know you, right? They've never heard of you. And really the whole goal, and this is kind of some marketing concepts, obviously, but you're trying to get that group 2 and group 3 into group 1. And so a great way to tell your story, to really showcase who you are and what you're all about, is to host an event. So lastly, this is super important to understand, kind of, we talked about that human element to virtual events. So I definitely want to focus on kind of the chemicals that are lacking at this time due to COVID and a lot of kind of social distancing measures. We are social creatures, and we definitely are seeking that human connection. And here's why. Dopamine is that chemical we get from accomplishment, and you'll see that, say, like in a competition. And so without it, you might have be experiencing more self-doubt or lack of psych. And when I say you, I mean your customer base, right? Starting to understand why they might be feeling some way and what you can do to alleviate that. So dopamine, serotonin is kind of that attention chemical. So you get it when someone's, say, watching you do a route. I know I climb better when people are watching me. Maybe some people don't, but the attention you get, even just being around other people, and without it, there's feelings of loneliness and depression. Oxytocin is a pretty known chemical, but it is brought about by intimacy and by even human touch, and creates trust. And without it, you get feelings of rejection and disloyalty. So in order to foster these kind of happy chemicals among your customer base, just really trying to address those with creating opportunities for accomplishment, creating opportunities for attention, and for maybe not physical, intimacy, but even just emotional intimacy in a really special way. Because cortisol is the opposite of that. That's all the stress hormone, and that's what we're feeling especially. But all those top 3 chemicals can actually kind of halt the production of cortisol. So let's help everyone be a little less stressed and really create these happy moments. So I'll do my best myself over here. Okay, so I'm gonna jump straight into strategy, and thank you again for putting any questions, comments. Keep the chatter going. Really love it. So this is just to give you just some bullet points on how to even approach virtual events. So identify your objective, and this is going to dictate kind of the size, duration, platform you use, maybe if there are presenters, your presenter selection, marketing strategies. What you're trying to achieve will definitely formulate everything after that. But it's very, very important to identify who your event is for. I want to quote Erica Brule, who's another event professional, and she said, make sure that you're doing an event for people, not to people. So that really resonated with me, and just kind of starting to understand your audience better. I'm really glad again to have Kenji Haratunian, who's going to talk about that and kind of not making any assumptions about your audience. What are their unstated narratives? What are their motivations? Really getting to know them on a granular level is going to help you connect with them much better. Brainstorming ideas, and so we'll get a chance to do that today, and that's something you can do with your team. I like to think that everything's on the table, and then you narrow the list. So I definitely would want to point to strategies presented by Caleb Fitzgerald on this platform that the CWA hosted, and you can find that recording on their website as far as ways and methods to narrow down what options you have. Really focus on content first. So I know that there's going to be probably a lot of questions around like, great, how do I do all this? We'll be definitely addressing that. Actually next week, I'll be on with George Mahali. This presentation, I want to keep really simple, really focused on what's possible. But know that when you're thinking about strategy and you're thinking about virtual events, just make sure that, you know, don't get too hung up on all the technology behind it, because it's really what you're producing that matters. And so I often like to use the analogy of like a cake. Make sure like it's the best darn chocolate cake ever, and then the icing and everything will follow. So kind of 3 takeaways for strategy. Keep it simple. So even right now, I'm just doing my best to kind of really keep us focused on virtual events, the why and the what, and make it easy to join, easy to sign up, et cetera, and make it entertaining, because people are giving you their time, and again, they're just a click away from a distraction, just like you. So are you here with me, hopefully? Okay, cool. So now we go into types of events. This is first a question I wanted to ask you, kind of what types of events did your gym used to host? Maybe if you want to throw in the chat there. Laura, can you help me read out a few of those?
Yeah, we've got a poll. I'm going to launch it right now. Just
yeah, cool.
A moment. Asking if in real life IRL events were a big part of what your gym offered before you closed.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point. That not everyone, it was kind of a major feature. But yeah, go ahead and answer that. And we'll give you 10 seconds to answer. So if you're ever doing a poll, that's pretty common. Just because hopefully everyone's engaged, everyone's on their laptop. I know it can be hard to do a poll sometimes on a different device, but so counting down, get your answers in.
And you also start to see the answers slow down, so.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just some tactics you can talk about, but really you don't need to poll up for very long, just as far as best practices. Okay, yeah.
So we've got about half of people responding, and let me share the results here with you guys. So.
Awesome.
Vast majority saying that IRL events were definitely a big part of their gym offering prior to closure.
That's great. Yeah, super awesome to hear. That makes me happy, but you know, I'm sure it makes your customers happy too, and there's a reason that is. So thinking about those types of events, I'm going to jump to the kind of 7 main ones that I can think of, right? Competitions, demos and partnerships, fundraisers, themed events, member appreciation, kind of educational based clinics, whatnot, and affinity groups that you might host depending on different demographics. So these are kind of the major categories that At least, you know, I even put on the circuit when I was a marketing manager, but you know, and you can think through, and I'm sure I'm missing some, so please, again, comment, add them in. But just if you were to categorize them, this can kind of hopefully help you start to delineate where you can put some attention to what virtual events are possible. Also noticing that there's subcategories based off of frequency and duration. So idea time, and I'm doing my best. Oh darn! So I'm 30 seconds away from my 15-minute mark. So hopefully I still have your attention. I really appreciate it so much. Feel free to screenshot this, everyone. Let's see. I'll move myself out of the way. Yeah. So this is just an example. On the left side, I was just brainstorming some possible event ideas that, oh man, it would be so rad to have like a live stream recording with new live commentary. If you pulled the audio, like that was just a crazy idea I had. And I've actually seen done in other sports now. Again, going through the list, we'll definitely have time. I want to hear from you all during the Q&A, kind of what's worked, what hasn't, et cetera, questions. But yeah, feel free, again, as I'm talking, you're taking the time to read this. I don't need to read it out loud to you. On the right side, however, I just want to acknowledge some of the gyms that I talked to before this call. So Brad will have a chance to talk about his Netflix party. Everything in yellow is from Touchstone. So really cool things that they've been doing, this kind of challenge in place, sort of based off the shelter in place notion. And, you know, things well outside of climbing. Yes, it's cool to have like a hangboard comp, but, you know, any kind of little challenges to help that dopamine level. Digital disco, Facebook video premiere is similar to a Netflix party. It's a feature that Facebook has if you own the content. Is Ryan Moon on the call? Raise your hand. We'd love to call on you and just speak a little bit if you have a second. If not, no worries. Yeah, so just kind of cool just to see what's
here,
on. Oh,
and
yeah.
I think he's on. Sorry, we're just going through the technical process of unmuting. There you go. Hey, Ryan.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So just about the I guess 12 through 19 on here.
Yeah, if you could just actually comment on the Kaya app, I would love. You're so good at explaining it. This one is so unique, you all. So when it comes to virtual events, that's just one way to engage your community digitally. But Ryan, if you could help us with what the Kaya app is.
Yeah, sure. So Kaya is an app that it basically funnels information from the backend version, which is Plastic, and that's the route setting facing component. And then so that filters into Kaya, which is the public facing part of the app. And it kind of works as like, I don't know how many people on this call are familiar with 8a.nu, but it's a website where you can log outdoor ascents, and Kaya is, I guess the best way to describe it is an indoor version of 8a. So you can log your ascents in a climbing gym. It has it's largely a social media platform. So, you know, you pop on the app, you see what the route setters have updated for, you know, a new wall that they've set. You've also seen all your friends logging their climbs, so you can like their ascents, or what actually in the app it's fist bumping, and then you can comment on you know, their ascents, like, oh, super awesome, nice work, Chloe. You also upload videos, so if there's different ways of doing climbs, you know, you can see that in the videos. One of the things that I think is maybe most valuable in a sort of like a near future COVID situation is that obviously, like, you know, interactions with your climbing partners is going to be way different. You with a limited capacity, you might not be able to climb during the same time that your normal climbing partner would be. So it's a great way to see that your climbing partner has been climbing certain things, and then, you know, liking or commenting on those. So staying engaged with those people without actually having to be around them. So
thank you so much, Ryan. That's so interesting. We really appreciate it. Yeah. Definitely please contribute towards the conversation after this. But yeah, really, really unique ways to leverage technology to create that engagement, not just from a virtual event. I know that's the main topic, but I thought that was just so unique, and so I wanted to feature it. Also, just shout out to LCAP, who did the quarantine games. They had 1,600 participants. So it's 550 teams across their 16 locations that all participated in different challenges, gaining points for their gym, their home gym, and it created some fun competition and just some fun in general. I think that's what people are looking for. That home climbing challenge that's from Brooklyn Boulders, and so just like, you know, traverse a chair or traverse your kitchen. You've been seeing a lot of those videos. So again, please, if this kind of gives you some ideas on what your gym can do, throw it in the chat. Let's help one another. So I'm going to breeze through these. I definitely want to address the #1 question I can anticipate. Why do events if there's so many out there and there's so much fatigue? There's so much fatigue around virtual events. So I wanted to quote Joseph Pine, who's the author of The Experience Economy, super great book if you get a chance. And he said, customization is the antidote to commoditization. So commoditization is all about convenience and cost, right? And so where people are willing to make a little bit of some sacrifices is when, you know, around convenience and cost sometimes is when it is a customized experience, when it is tailored to your audience, when it's novel, when it's creative. So that's ways that you can kind of combat like, oh, just another event. It's not just another event because it's you and you're special, and maybe call it something besides a webinar, call it an episode. The quality of your content is going to be what's really going to keep people engaged and kind of stop them in their tracks and be like, oh, I should pay attention to that. And then if people are really fatigued by screens, maybe you can host an event that's still, you know, distance, but isn't using a screen. Maybe it's a podcast. Maybe you send people something that is experiential, like a puzzle or something. So there are ways to still engage. And last but not least, I wanted to leave you with kind of top 3 tips that kind of can hopefully make this a little bit more approachable. And again, next week we'll talk all about the how, but really don't expect perfection, right? This is all very new for everyone. Just try it. People are really kind of open to change right now, as we heard on the last call last Tuesday with Chip Massey and Adele Sears. Humanize that virtual event experience and you'll be successful. Kenesha Williams said that on a webinar I attended. Can't emphasize that enough. And again, tying back to what I started with. And consider primacy and recency effect. So the reason I'm bringing this up now is because it is kind of the end of my time. And there are studies, this is a proven effect that you will remember the beginning, right? So remember all that fun music, remember when you were commenting about virtual events you like, maybe you remember something of what I just said, but you're definitely gonna remember this. So where that translates into your own event, make it start awesome, make it end awesome, and people will walk away being like, whoa, that was a rad event. So there we go. Thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna introduce our next panelists. So really excited to have Brad Wertz and Kenji Haratunian on with me. I definitely don't need to be the only one talking. There's so much to say about all this topic, but I'm gonna first introduce Brad. And so quick little bio, Brad Wertz is the founder and president of Boulders Climbing Gym in Madison, Wisconsin. Boulders was one of the first dozen or so commercial climbing gyms in the country, opening in 1996. Today, in their 24th year of operation, they have 2 locations in Madison with more in the pipeline. So congrats, Brad. Brad was also a rep for major climbing brands such as Petzl, 510, and Mountain Hardwear for over 2 decades. So he definitely brings a ton of experience. So excited. And I'm going to end my screen share and take it away. Brad.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. A lot of takeaways there. Hopefully I'll be able to tie into some of those. So thanks for doing all that work, Chloe. Really cool. I'm really happy to be here too. But, you know, I think like a lot of us, not a lot of us, I'm going to say all of us, were thrown a loop here in early March, late February, depending on where you were in the country, about what we were going to do next. We have these tremendously brick and mortar businesses that we had to pivot to do something else. Our story was that first couple weeks in March, the writing was on the wall that we were going to have to do something and close. Most of Madison, where we're located, started shutting down on their own right. We had many businesses do work at home orders and, you know, really start virtualizing their business right away. And what we noticed all that week, we have really good Wi-Fi in both gyms. Our gym attendance kept going up. as people were required to work at home, they started using our space as like a workspace basically, and they'd climb and they'd work, and attendance was spiking, which is obviously not what we wanted to do. So we started to close down kind of the weekend of March 14th. March 16th was our last day. We closed March 17th, and on the evening of March 17th, we debuted our first events, which were online workouts. We had Tuesday scheduled workouts. I told my team, hey, you have the same job description, you just don't have the gyms to do it in, go. And so our instructors came up with a platform. We got out on Facebook. We did Facebook Live events. First couple were done from the gym, and then when the city shut down with a stay-at-home order, we started doing them from our living rooms. And we realized right away that we needed to do social events, and our social events are always cause-related. And I'm going to get back to that because I think it's really important. But basically we did what Chloe outlined and what some of you talked about. We just made lists of what we used to do and tried to figure out how to virtualize them. And what we discovered right away was that raw and live is better than polished and canned. So the first takeaway I'd like to leave you with is raw and live was better at the time, was better than polished and canned. If we posted a video, nobody watched it. If we posted live event, people tuned in for it, and then they referenced it back. So immediately our workouts had 30, 40 people, our yoga sessions had 30, 40 people. But what we were discovering is people were going back and doing favorite workouts again, whereas if we launched a workout video, nobody clicked on it once and didn't go back to do it again. So raw and live is what we were craving. I think it speaks to what Chloe was talking about in terms of the chemicals that we get from interaction. We're really deprived of that. I noticed at my house, our TV turned to only live content. And we weren't watching reruns anymore. We weren't watching TV. We were tuning in for all the concerts that were happening and the live events that we could find because sports had been turned off, all these other things. So craving live content, that continues, and I'll get back to that as well. But where we went immediately is we've been raising a lot of money for the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County. We've recently completed an agreement with One Climb. We're going to get 2 climbing walls here in Madison for One Climb. So we've been focusing on Boys and Girls Club of Dane County, and we worked with Kevin Jorgensen. And one of the first big events that we wanted to have was the Don Wall Watch Party. And we convinced Kevin to come on and do a Q&A just before the watch party. We launched it on Netflix. We provided the link. We launched it via Instagram Live. At one point, we had 1,400 people tuning in to watch KJ. And just to underscore raw and live is more powerful. KJ was out in his yard basically walking and playing with his kid during the event and kind of holding his iPhone in front of him. People loved it. It was very real. It was very authentic. It was very accessible. And that was really important to our events. At the same time, I was telling my team all these stories. It used to be, and we still are, quite a literate sport. When I came up climbing, we were told about the Arctic and Antarctic explorers, about the early climbers on Everest. I mean, we don't do that so much in climbing gyms. But one of the stories I referenced frequently was John Long's The Only Blasphemy. And, that got me through 9/11. That story got me through the last recession. And I was telling my team, God, you got to read this story, The Only Blasphemy, The Only Blasphemy. And as we were thinking about other events to do, we thought, what if we had John Long come on and read The Only Blasphemy? So we reached out, and he wasn't doing anything. And sure enough, we got him in. But we didn't make it just about John Long, and we didn't make it just about us. All of our events were about a charity. We always provided a shared food experience. We made a deal with the local restaurants to take takeout, all from local restaurants. Sometimes we arranged a discount. Sometimes that wasn't convenient for the restaurant, but we said we're all going to order food at this time from this event. We literally crushed restaurants. They were so thankful. It was great for the community. I had restaurants call and say, we had to shut down orders because you bought all of our food, which was really a powerful statement for the community and really helped us in our community, really make a presence, which will help us for our future endeavors. But it's not that everything we did was perfect. We actually had some spectacular failures. We had a fireside with Max event. Max is our manager, and he was just going to host a chat session, and we had a video of fire back behind him. And Max and I were the only ones who showed up for that. And I just want to say there's not a huge downside to failure. If you have an event in your gym and only 2 people show up, it's embarrassing, it's painful, it costs a lot of money. If you have a failure online, everyone assumes that everyone else was there. Nobody knows. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't cost you much. It costs you your time. And if it didn't work, you tweak it, rejigger, remark it, do it again. Part of the failure of that event is we approached it with a flash mob. Hey, this is in 2 days, show up. And while that got attention early on, it didn't create traction for this particular event, so we didn't try it again. All of the events that we did, including the workouts, were free. I want to point that out, but we were able to make transactions on them. And so one of the things we did right away was a t-shirt. We made special edition t-shirts. I'm wearing the one from The Only Blasphemy here. John Long approved. The punchline of The Only Blasphemy is, you got to read it if you haven't, but it's at least go out trying. It's just John Long hucking for this dino that if he doesn't make, he's going to die. And he says to himself, at least go out trying. So that's a huge punchline. And so we made a t-shirt out of it, and we sold, a bunch of them. And we've made special edition t-shirts every 10 days throughout this. And we promote them during these events. And we sold hundreds and hundreds of t-shirts, which is great branding for us. It's good money. It's not sustaining money, but we've sold hundreds of t-shirts. They're all individual, and every athlete who showed up for one of our events gets a free t-shirt. So they're out there in the world wearing them. We also passed our tip jar at the end of each event saying, hey, we're glad you support the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, for Kevin Jorgensen's event, we raised $1,000 just through donations that night. We passed our tip jar. We got several hundred, $10, $20 at each. We may continue with the tip jar now that we're open. We opened yesterday. We may not, but it's something we'll consider if we keep offering free events. So where we're going next, the John Long stories ended up becoming our events called Boulder's Sessions. And after John Long, the week after, we had Kitty Calhoun come on. We had Hans Floring come on. That was a great event. He was moving at the time, so he did the event from his car at a rest stop. So, talk about raw and real. It was cool. Hans pulled off a great show that night. We had Megan Martin come in. We had our team kids come in and ask her questions face-to-face via Zoom. That worked out really well. Incidentally, we virtualized all of our kids programs via Zoom as well. Those have been super popular. Parents are looking for a place for kids to do things during the day. Sometimes they just need a break from them. Sometimes they need some guidance, and so we were able to provide that, and we're still providing that, and we'll continue to do so. So we're going to build hybrid workouts. It's going to help us build a yoga solution. We're small gyms that every time we do a yoga session, we have to shut down part of the gym, and it creates a user conflict. But personally, I haven't been in practice for years. I revitalized my practice during this event, and it's much more favorable for me to do this at home. If I fall over in tree pose, I stop, get a drink of water. It's embarrassing if I do that in the gym. And so virtual yoga is going to be a thing for us for some time forward. We also we'll move this eventually behind a member wall, but probably not behind a paywall, meaning we'll make some of these events for members only. But I also want to point out, it's not expensive to scale it. Most everyone has the tools to do this. I'm talking to you from a laptop. We've done these from iPhones. Instagram Live requires an iPhone in most cases. We got a subscription to Restream. It's like $24 a month. We got a subscription to Zoom. That's another $24 a month. We all have access to it. We can improve our quality, and we will, but I've already taken bids on it. It's no more than $1,000 worth of video equipment and lighting. It doesn't take a lot of money, and again, if you fail, it's not a big deal, and you can use this stuff for other things. So keys to good events for us, or make them about something other than you. It was really key to do them about a charity. We also had Brendan Leonard. I forgot to mention Brendan. Brendan came in specifically because we were doing events specifically key to constituents in our community. So Kitty Calhoun runs the Chicks climbing events. We did her event thinking of our Madison Women Climbers group. We Climb for Recovery group that we have on Sunday nights at the gyms. Brendan Leonard has written a book about how climbing helped him in his recovery from addiction. And we wanted to key in on that to do that. So general events by theme went really well, and we wanted to hit all the touch points of all of our communities. So we're going to carry them forward. This event isn't over yet. That's the fourth takeaway I want to give you, is we are opening, but there's going to be another 18 to 24 months of COVID-related closures, masks, limited access. We are planning to carry these forward. And the fifth thing I want to remind everyone about is that early adopters always prevail. You don't have to be the best, although that helps. Getting out there in front of your community helps fight what I've already seen as burnout on virtual events. I'm not convinced that that's what we're seeing right now with our less attendance. What I'm convinced is that the doors are opening and it's nice outside and it's summer. I think when the weather turns in the fall again and we all have to kind of shelter in place again, the virtual events are going to take off. We'll carry them through the summer. In a minimal way. We have our Boulder session this week with Kai Leitner. He's going to talk about the article he just wrote in Rock and Ice about race and climbing. That's going to be a very powerful answer to Black Lives Matter movements that have been going on in the last 2 weeks. We actually suspended talks with Rebecca Rush and Jeremy Collins because of the ongoing disruption. Felt like it would be tone deaf to take them out. So launching again with Kai Leitner, we feel like it's going to be a great thing for us on Thursday. But yeah, that's all I had really. I'd be happy to answer questions, but just to reiterate, raw and live is better. Don't be afraid of failure. This stuff isn't expensive to scale. This isn't over yet, so keep planning. And then early adopters always prevail. Jump on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Laura, I think we have a poll actually about gyms and whether you plan to continue. So here, do you plan to continue hosting virtual events even after you open or reopen? Yes, only educational or fitness related, maybe, and no. If you can go ahead and answer that real quick. Again, 10 seconds is pretty good best practices. So wrapping up, hopefully we have about a good chunk of people responding. Thank you again for tuning in. We're getting right to Kenji right after this. And you want to show us the results, Laura?
Yeah, we're still getting a few responses,
okay,
but
cool.
It looks like it's slowing down, and we've got a little over half of you who've participated, so I'll go ahead and end it now. And I will share the results.
Yeah, so super interesting. Yes, 24% educational, fitness related only, kind of at that 30%, maybe 35%. So some questions, but we're learning about it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump right into introducing Kenji. Kenji Harutunian is the founder of Kenji Consults. He's also the show director for the Big Gear Show, and he's board director for Access Fund and other outdoor an advocate for outdoor inclusivity. Kenji has worked in the outdoor industry continuously since 1985, and with it brings such a wealth of experience. He's worked in events since 1999, most notably running Outdoor Retailer for 8 years. Kenji also brings a lot of experience in virtual events, conceiving and producing Virtual Design Center. He can tell you more about that back in 2010. So this was kind of in the early ages of virtual events, and Outdoor Retailer Hub in 2011 through 2013. His work and training in the DEI space began in 1987 through Outward Bound's LA Urban Youth Project and through the Nielsen Employee Resource Group. Kenji also founded the Inclusivity Luncheon at Outdoor Retailer in 2009, and has given out a Kenji Award celebrating leadership and diversity and inclusion across the outdoor industry. So without further ado, thank you so much, Kenji, for being here. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Hey, thanks, Chloe. And, I point to Brad as one of the conspirators of the Kenji Award, so it wasn't something I thought was a good idea. Thanks to everybody for letting me join here. I'm pretty humbled by this group. I'm the old man of the crew here, and certainly a digital immigrant. So I also don't manage or run climbing gyms. So I want to throw the respect out to all of you that do, and thank you for your service and your combining the community of climbing across the country. Where I am involved is in events, and I've been running events since really 1999. I started with Outdoor Retailer. And it's been an interesting run, and certainly in this latest situation with the coronavirus and the effect that it's had on events, it's been devastating, to be and I'm sure you all can relate to this, is that getting together in events, in trade shows and convention centers, or even in campgrounds or festival grounds, is suddenly not a thing. And so for us event producers, it's the pivot has been absolutely critical. And pivot to digital, pivot to virtual is what every single event planner is doing right now out there. So as we're talking about virtual events in the climbing gym space, know that there's a whole movement out there in every industry where events is a thing, which is every industry. So I have just a couple of slides. I don't want to be too repetitive, so I think I'm going to go shorter than everyone on this. So I'll share my screen. I've got a few slides to go through, but you'll recognize some of the themes that Brad and Chloe have already brought up. And so let me see if I can do that as a, there we go. I think it's this one. Here's Chloe. No, I don't want to do that. I'm going to move you, Chloe, down here. All right. So let's see. Can everybody see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? No screen yet? How about this? Oh, I see. I got to hit the share button. How's that? All right. Here we go. So I'm just going to motor through these slides. I've just got a few and you'll recognize the themes. But one of the first ones is, this is probably not kosher for me to be sharing. So this is only a partial screenshot, but it's called a pivot table. It's a pivot analysis that the Access Fund did when first considering what to do about the annual event. The annual dinner is a big event for the Access Fund, also for the Alpine Club and other important local climbing organizations across the country. And these are, in a lot of ways, like with Friends of Joshua Tree, it's our main fundraiser for the year. So if we can't have that, what are we going to do? So this is the kind of analysis you might consider in looking at events that you've done historically. This doesn't show the whole table, but you can kind of see the basic format. Do we pivot the event to a virtual? That's the question that many event planners are asking across the country right now and answering, or multitasking, which is planning for the event, but also planning for virtual aspects of it. That might be called a hybrid event. So from there, this has already been answered essentially by Chloe, which is, what is a virtual event? Like, what are we talking about here? There's education, which are webinars and insights into climbing techniques or what have you, safety management, etc. There's online engagement, which is more about gaming and the polls that we've been using during this presentation. Competitions, which you all know about, including some of the more creative ones like climbing on your home furniture competition and pull-up contest and things like that. Online networking, you know, in my experience, that's one of the hardest things to facilitate in the online environment. So, but I think that the tools of today, some of which we've already talked about on this call and Ryan mentioned, you know, those are really different than when I produced the first virtual trade show in the outdoor industry, which was the Virtual Design Center back in 2010. Trade activity, which is what I do with trade shows and other events like the Outdoor Media Summit, which is a media gathering. And lastly, storytelling, which is really from a gym standpoint, maybe one of the most important in telling your story and why your gym is different and unique in the competitive set of your region or nationally. I'm pivoting to digital, or not just digital right now, but to inclusivity. And this, you know, why is that even part of this conversation, right? We're talking about virtual events and climbing gyms. Well, the reason it's important is that the virtual platform is very different. And most of you, all of you, have probably already participated in Zoom meetings and different types of video conferences, GoTos and WebExes and stuff that has breakout rooms and all that. And it's a different experience and it's a different opportunity. So if you see it this way, you're going to be telling the story of your gym to not just your membership, but to the audience. There's going to be non-members involved, maybe friends of friends or family members, and you're painting a picture of what your gym is about. So this is a kind of a new opportunity. Everyone is level set on this now. So in the past, people talked about your gym, you have your presence established both online and in person. You have birthday parties, you have events inside the gym. Now, suddenly there's this different experience. It's the virtual video conference experience. What picture are you painting in that world? And is it one that's inclusive? Just as an example, in this presentation, Chloe has quoted 2 different African-American people in this presentation. Without us knowing it, we've expanded kind of our brains about what's relevant to gyms. And that's a tiny thing, of course, but you start to multiply those things, and it's how your story of your gym unfolds. And so I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because virtual events give you an opportunity to tell your story in a more inclusive way, to reach an audience that's not your usual suspects, and it can help you expand. And the news today I just read before coming onto here was anecdotal. 24 Hour Fitness just filed Chapter 11. I don't know that I would see 24 Hour Fitness as a community gathering place. I don't know that they invested in building that community out. And so that is maybe the warning sign off the side of the road for those just moving down the path of standard gym management. So we talked about it in this slide. It talks about imagery, video, some of the training, some of the voices and faces that you're featuring in your presentations, if they're thoughtfully curated, can really paint an inclusive picture of who your gym is, and a welcome mat for people that might not feel totally comfortable just cruising into their local gym for the first time. It's kind of like Brad was talking about doing yoga, in his front room is more comfortable than posing in a room full of people, 3 feet apart. And some of the don'ts on this, and this is a whole really separate topic that I hope the CWA will continue to address, because this is a long-term investment. It's not going to necessarily have an ROI next month or 3 weeks down the road. If you're going to include people in your presentations, make sure that they're either paid or that they are getting some kind of compensation. And now you're not asking them to do work because of because they're a person of color, or because they occupy one of the diversity categories, ability or veteran status or age diversity, or whatever aspect you're trying to focus on. Obviously, tokenizing, using people simply for that purpose is something to avoid. Moving too fast and not being authentic to who you are is an important thing, and being humble and transparent and saying, hey, look, we're not suddenly going from 0 to 60. We're not experts here. We're taking the first step, and we're going to take the second step, and we have the intention, and we have a methodology around which we're becoming more inclusive. So that's something that I help companies do, and organizations as well, beyond Outdoor Retailer. And there's a couple points that kind of Brad had brought up. I call it iterating, but it's the same thing he was talking about, which is learning and doing again, and applying the lessons of iteration and what I call hansei kai. So hansei kai, I don't call it that. It's a Japanese term that means kind of the post-mortem, or the meeting that you have after the event. So after you do your webinar or your educational piece or your online event, get together and have a discussion about it, and discuss what went well and keep those things in place, discuss what didn't go so well and fix those things, and then do it again. And it's a great opportunity to learn and get better and better at this, because I'm of the opinion that this virtual component to events is not going to be a trend that goes away. This isn't a fashion trend. We're getting normalized to participating in these kind of events now, and we're going to continue to do that. And then I think lastly, just some key takeaways that I would like to offer up. You're obviously featuring training and education was the easy place to start. And that if you're not doing it, that's a place where you've already got competent people. You've already got skilled teachers and trainers. Featuring nonprofit partners is something Brad brought up, and I absolutely go double thumbs up on that. That helps to tell your story in a way that really helps people understand not only who you're connected to, but the connection between indoor and the climbing community at large. Engaging sponsors, this is something that didn't get brought up, but that there are companies, brands in the industry that we all work in that want to reach your audience. They want to have a relationship, or at least talk to them a little bit. And so by engaging them, you can incorporate your partners, like brand partners like a Black Diamond or La Sportiva or whoever, because there's a demand there. So there's a way to connect them into your content. And then just the point about iteration that we've already discussed. So I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Kenji. Yeah, really appreciate all your points. It's just incredible to have you on, and everyone. I just want to acknowledge the time. We had so much amazing things to cover that we do want to run over, if that's okay with you. We totally understand if you have to hop off, but now is the Q&A time. I see that some questions have already been answered by our panelists, so awesome, but great information. Kenji, Brad, thank you so much. I'm gonna field some questions. I wanna make sure that I had taken some notes, so it looked like Taylor, and so when you're doing a Q&A, folks, make sure you use names. It just creates a more humanized experience. So Taylor was asking for kind of ideas. What have other gyms been doing? What hasn't worked? Anyone want to chime in there? Raise a hand or comment in the chat. And Laura, help me out if anyone's raising their hand. It is really interesting. This is an opportunity to learn from one another. We're almost 100 people on the call, and I've been told only 4 people have dropped off. It's been amazing to just see the retention. There's so much good information here, so thank you, thank you. Also, stating those numbers in your own events can help with that kind of social influence of like, hey, you should stay on because other people are too. So just again, some tips and tricks.
We've got Juan with his hand raised.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think it was
a mistake.
I messed up. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
Well, we've also got Hillary Harris here. Someone unmute you, Hillary.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys
Hillary.
hear me?
Hey, Hillary.
Yep.
Hi.
Hey, Hillary.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. We've been doing Zoom classes. I think a lot of people have been doing those for yoga and fitness core classes. And Brad, you pointed out that live classes seemed to be a lot more effective. And I wanted to second that because our Zoom classes were well attended in the beginning, but we've seen quite a bit of drop off in recent weeks. And I'm just curious if other people are experiencing that, if people are just sort of zoomed out, or if we were to pivot and go live, would that be more effective? And my other question or comment is that we had this idea of when we do open, we did open the Louisville gym yesterday. We haven't opened the Portland location yet, but we've been batting around this idea of doing hybrid yoga classes because we can't really have a lot of people in the studio, but possibly videotaping those classes so that some people are there in the studio and other people can come in to the class virtually. I'm wondering if other people have thought of that.
I can comment on that. You know, we've noticed a drop off, and I attribute it. I mean, I think virtual burnout is a thing partially. I also think that with lessened restrictions, we're all hungry to get out. But the main thing I think is that the weather changed. So we're just in our seasonal rut, and I'm anticipating that virtual classes and the hybrid classes in particular will be really important as we go into fall. So we're going to pivot. We're actually we opened this week, so we're going to turn off our in living room virtual classes this week, but probably by the first week in July, we're going to start having outdoor virtual workouts where our instructors are out in parks doing workouts in parks and encouraging other people to go to a nearby park to work on the swing set and monkey bars and things like that. They'll also be in our gyms using our equipment, but we want to make these all body weight. So we're going to, pivot to a more accessible outdoor event, and then also move the time zone. We have them at 5:30 now, which is just too early. So we want to make them more towards sunset. People work out later, they play longer in the summer. So we'll adapt to that. And then the hybrid workouts for yoga, we're definitely doing that just because we are space constrained. And we'll probably do those on site with the instructors and maybe a handful of people, and then everyone else can tune in from home. And we'll move those behind not a paywall, but a member wall, likely with a Facebook group that people will have to join every month, and we'll let members in, or people who bought yoga passes for the month, just to get rid of some of the clutter out there and make them more for our members. But that's how we're addressing those.
Yeah, those are some interesting ways to approach that. And we have Kristen Horowitz here who would like to jump in as well.
Yeah, we actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, I am really lucky in that I have I can't speak today, I'm sorry. We have a studio director that's actually an instructor and fairly well regarded. And so she's actually really invested through this whole thing. And we've opted not to do hybrid yoga because she's also really into film. And she's like, the quality of what you're trying to do diminishes if you're teaching a class, then the people that are watching the Zoom call are not actually seeing everything that teacher's doing. So we've opted to continue to do virtual until we have, we're at a point where we can have safe space for this, but we've done the math on it. We can have 3 students in this yoga room. So we decided that wasn't worth it. The other thing is yeah, like Brad, we got rid of morning classes because there was not much attendance. The people that did morning, what we do is we have a live Zoom class, and the instructors actually watch the Zoom and adjust people, so it's really customized. So that speaks to the customization. And then beyond that, we're again investing in equipment for it, but we're looking at actually changing the face of how yoga is instructed, because again, she's actually a yoga instructor for teacher training and things like that. And she's like, I've always really wanted to do track training, where instead of you just show up to a class and you don't really know what to do, really have true instruction. So we're kind of changing what our model is over time. And we've actually are developing a class that anybody can get, including anybody on this call. And it's yoga training for climbers. So it's specific to like, don't overstretch, don't all do all these things. So we're doing that. We're going to be doing tracks on like what the purpose of breathing is, so that they can have more of a robust experience at home because they don't have an instructor there to help them. But she really doesn't think that, we had the big drop off too. But she's spoken to people, and it's people who had made it their practice versus people who were just kind of casually seeing what we were doing. And I think if you look at how many people attend your yoga classes, it's pretty consistent with like the drop off of people in general. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we don't even have, studios aren't open here. So we're really the only game in town at the moment. So there's an opportunity to grow yoga. So seeing it as, a way to do it authentically. And if anybody out there has the opportunity to, you can find our video about it. I did a fireside chat with her through the closure, and it's about an hour long, and she really talks about the depth of that kind of stuff. So you guys, if you're not a practitioner, it might help you see how to work with your yoga class.
I think all that's really cool, Kristen. And, one of the things that I wanted to key in on and return to was we learned early on, and I think one of the failures of some of the yoga I've dropped in from other gyms is that having the instructor manage the tech, do the yoga, and call out the class was too much. So we had the tech static, meaning we just set up a phone or a laptop and left it there. And then we had an offsite instructor who called the class. And then we had somebody performing the class in front of everybody so that they could just concentrate on doing the yoga as the instructor called it. So we actually had 2 instructors for each class. And I think that helped with the effectiveness and the engagement both. Because every time I've looped into someone else's class, it's just really awkward as they adjust the screen and they are trying to do the pose and they're trying to call it. It was just too much.
Okay, thank you so much. I definitely want to respect everyone's time, but also I feel like there's just so many great ideas and great people on this call. We're still, still many people on the call as well. So maybe we'll just take 1 or 2 more or if you can help me with any raised hands. But I do, I'm looking at the Q&A, looks like Brad, thank you for answering a lot of those just in the Q&A. So feel free to reference those. You guys have also popped up a slide. We really would love to stay in touch. So I've included best way to reach us, which is email across the board. And then please do follow us across social media. We really appreciate it. So again, screenshot that or please keep in touch. It's been an awesome time. Any last questions or ideas to share? It looks like a question for Brad from George. For the ideas your gym has in place now and has done, are the ideas coming from you or your staff or a combination of both or something else? Can you comment on that?
It's a combination of both. I mean, we run the dialectic, meaning one of us comes up with an idea, thesis, somebody comes up with the antithesis, and we collide a lot and try to make it better. Doesn't always work, but some of the things I drive, I'm really keen on developing this hybrid program where a lot of my staff right now is really more interested in turning it off because it's summer and we're not getting the attendance. But you know, my job is to plot strategy for the company going forward. And just looking at this runway of 18 to 24 months minimum, and the fact that we've had enough of this, that, you know, there are changes in habits. We've all learned to live differently, and we learn the benefit of working out at home, whether it's yoga or workouts. It just saves you time and energy and lets you get a better workout. So I think the workouts in particular are here to stay. I think online events are here to stay. We bat ideas back and forth all the time, and I'm fortunate to have a good team. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much. There is so much to talk about on this topic, which is why we actually are doing 2 webinars on the topic. So please join me and George Mahali. Shout out, he is on the call. Thank you so much. We're going to be presenting on how to produce virtual events and kind of how to run them. But I just kind of want to touch on some main takeaways from, again, thank you, Brad and Kenji, you know, just that, like, it's okay to make mistakes, know your audience, and really kind of address their needs. And also, you know, it's so interesting, and I want to just bring one little fact in. In 1917, Scientific America published kind of all the fears around movies, because they thought no one would go to plays anymore because there's movies out there. I think the same type of fear happened when the telephone came on. Like, no one's ever going to talk to one another. So I can see this fear happening around virtual events. It is new. It is kind of scary, but people will still come to your live events. People will still come to experiences once, you know, in real life, kind of once they're available and possible. But until then, adapting is the way to go. And I want to be a resource to all of you on how to do that. So please reach out. Again, my email is there. And I'm usually behind the scenes, so this has been a pleasure to actually kind of be in front of the crowd. And thank you so much, CWA, panelists, and everyone who contributed in the chat and raised their hand. Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. And again, as Chloe said, her and George will be with us again next week to talk about how to run virtual events, getting into details there. So again, that's Tuesday, June 23rd at 10 a.m. Mountain. And as always, the CWA team is here for you. So if you have ideas or questions, things that you are dealing with that you need some backup on, reach out to us and we are here for you. So thank you so much for joining us today for this CWA community call, and we will see you next time.
Thanks all.